Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going over the 8 pen questions by Simone and Leanne Likes from 2024. I'm a little bit behind on this one, but I wanted to make a video about it because I've loved watching these 8 pen question videos, and now there's the 8 more pen question videos for 2025, and I also want to make a video about that, but I wanted to start with 8 pen questions to begin. I ended up writing 8 more pen questions up here, and I realized that this is actually the 8 pen questions, the original, so I just did a little washi tape over that one, and let's begin. I'm a little bit sick, so I'm sorry if I'm like coughing and it has been a time. I don't know what's going around, but I've had this horrible sinus infection, and now it's like a deep chest cough thing that's going on. It's been terrible. It has not been a fun time, but I think I am slowly starting to feel a little bit better this week, so fingers crossed. Okay, so if I cough, I apologize. I will try to edit it out. Just like that. Okay, so first question. When and how did your fountain pen journey begin? My fountain pen journey began in 2013 when I was a sophomore in college, and I was taking the hardest classes I've ever taken in my life, even harder than my grad school classes. I was a genetics major. I was a biotechnology major with a minor in genetics. And so I was taking an advanced genetics class and organic chemistry all in one semester, and it was absolutely brutal. It was just absolutely brutal. I just studied all week long. It was atrocious. So I was kind of like, I feel like when I go through times of duress in my life, I look for an escape. I look for something fun and joyful to sort of like sweep me away. And sometimes it's a book, and sometimes it's a hyperfixation. And it just so happened that I think I went to Barnes & Noble, and my eyes happened across the calligraphy pens that they had in a Barnes & Noble, and I've looked at them a bunch, and I've always been intrigued by them, but in that moment, my brain was like, ooh, what's this about? And I think I ended up doing like a lot of research and starting on calligraphy and kind of like expanding and being like, right, calligraphy pens, and people being like, oh, these actually are kind of like terrible. These ones from Barnes & Noble, just get a fountain pen instead. So that is when my fountain pen journey began, and I really started on it, number one, because I love journaling, but number two, I thought fountain pens would improve my handwriting, and years later, I found that's not really the case, but I still love fountain pens, and I love them for different reasons now. So that is how my journey began. My favorite inks in the beginning versus my favorite inks now. My favorite inks in the beginning, I started off with diamine inks and Noodler's inks. That's kind of, I think, what was very popular at the time. So I had Noodler's, I think it's Black Swan in Australian Roses, and I had Noodler's Apache Sunset, and maybe one of the diamine inks. I can't remember which one, but I do remember I had the diamine bottle. That's very distinct in my brain. So that is where kind of like what my inks were in the beginning, but I found as the years went by, the Noodler's ink got precipitates or mold in it. I'm still not really sure which, and it was disgusting and gross, and I had to throw it away. And I think my diamine ink, it was Apache Sunset. I feel like the Noodler's ink got mold in it, and the Apache Sunset, it probably just precipitated out, because I do believe that orange inks have the tendency to want to precipitate. Please somebody correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about that. It might have just been mold. It's been so long I don't remember, but there was gunkies in my ink, and I was not okay about it, and I felt so bad, but I threw them away. But I was like, well, there's nothing I can do about this. It's just done. And they were in storage. They were in the dark. Like, it was just a sad time. So I threw those inks away during my sort of like transition years when I wasn't really using fountain pens very much. I don't remember exactly when I dropped off, but maybe let's say like 2015, 2014. and then I picked it back up in maybe 2018, 2019. So favorite inks now. So my favorite inks now, let me go grab them because I want to show you. My favorite inks now are the Iroshizuku inks. I love these inks so much. This was the first one that I got when I returned to fountain pens, Konpeki, and then I asked my partner to get me Yamabudo for Christmas 2 years ago. And yeah, these are my beloved fountain pen inks. I just love Iroshizuku inks so much. I love how they perform. I've had Konpeki, right, since like 2018, 2019. There's no mold, there's no crusties or gunkies in it. It's just been so solid for me, and the colors are so beautiful. The performance is so beautiful. Love these things. I actually just got Tsutsuji because that azalea color, I actually have a ton of azaleas that grow in my front yard, and it's like exactly that color. So I just, once I saw they were discontinuing it, I had to get it. I'm still trying to decide if I want to get the Kirisame or the Kosumosu. I'm still trying to decide, but I had to jump on Tsutsuji for sure. I'm so sad that they discontinued those. Okay, and let's see, how have my pen and ink tastes changed over time? This is a great question. I think in the beginning, I was most allured by the pen body. I don't have any of the pens from the beginning of my journey. I ended up throwing them all away. I think, I don't know. This is my suspicion. And I know a lot of people love using bulb syringes to clean out, like the baby bulb syringes to clean out their pens. But I have a suspicion, maybe I was too forceful, but all of my pens that I bulb syringe cleaned, like they start leaking. They've started leaking on me over time, which is part of the reason why I just kind of like threw them away. I just like gave up because they were leaking all over my stuff and it was just awful. So I had to throw away 2 Lamy Safaris and my Edison Nouveau pens. I can't remember if I threw them out because they were leaking or because I just could not get those nibs to write. They would skip. It was just awful. I was so frustrated by those pens. It's one of the reasons why I just rage quit fountain pens altogether. I just thought, this just isn't for me. This just isn't working. But I'm so glad that I gave it another shot years later. So yeah, I think in the beginning, my pen tastes were kind of about like, what's a pretty fountain pen body to me? Like at that time, because I was so new to fountain pens, I wasn't necessarily looking at like the pilots, right? The pilot vanishing points or the sailor pens. I those were not on my radar in any way. I was mostly looking at Lamy Safaris and all of those fun colors back in 2013. And then the Edison Nouveau pens were very popular back then. And they had just come out with like a hot pink swirly acrylic. So that's mostly what I was interested in then. And I think at the time also, I was a big fan of smoother nibs, I suppose, but I also didn't want a pen that wrote too broadly either. So I was a little bit picky, not in a bad way, but mostly I just wanted to write and not leak. Those are the most important things. For my inks, I think my ink tastes have changed over the time. At the beginning, I bought tons of samples, tons and tons of samples, Diamine, Noodlers primarily. I don't even remember any other brands I would have bought. I feel like those were the two because there's just so many Diamine inks. There is so many Diamine inks, and I had so many samples. I got so many samples, I was just overwhelmed. I was so overwhelmed that I didn't even know I didn't have any system. I just was like, oh, that's a pretty color. Oh, that's a pretty color. Oh, that's a pretty color. And I just bought everything that I thought was pretty. And it just got super overwhelming. You know, you have these little tiny sample bottles and they just add up over time. And then you're like, what do I even do with these? It was just a management issue. I was not prepared. So I would say how it's changed to now. Now, I think I really appreciate a balance. So I really, truly, like, pen bodies, like the acrylic, the resin, if it's pretty, that's cool, but it's not my primary driver. I'm not one of those people that needs the pen and ink to match. I don't have that in my brain. That doesn't do anything for me. I will use a pen with any color ink and it doesn't bother me. So really kind of like how I've approached pens now is I like to have a mix of like smooth nibs and nibs with feedback. So I have some Pilots and I have some Sailor pens. And I'm not really so interested in like collecting all of the same, like I think before I would have been like, oh, let me get like a bunch of Lamy Safaris and all of these different colors. And now I'm kind of like, no, I don't want that. I want to make sure that I have like a different variety of nibs because I'm very much focused on like the sensory and tactile feel of the nib and the nib variations, like, you know, fine, medium, fine, broad. I do like having a range of nib sizes because I kind of write, how I write is sort of based on my mood and just how I'm feeling and the vibe. Do I want to write with big, you know, fat letters, or do I want to write really tiny? That kind of changes just by the day, truly. So I like having options like that. As far as inks, my inks tastes have changed a lot. I have pretty much decided pretty strongly, except for one exception, that I am only going to be buying Iroshizuku inks. I had to throw away the Diamine ink. I had to throw away the Noodler's ink. So I'm probably never buying those inks ever again. I'll never say never, but probably never. I just feel like it's really helpful to me because inks are something that make me feel very overwhelmed in a way that pens don't make me feel overwhelmed. Like, I don't want, and this is just a personal decision, I don't want a ton of pens. I have 8, spoiler, I have 8 pens and I don't really want a lot more than that because I'm the kind of person that if I have a pen, I want it inked. Like, I would be kind of devastated. Maybe this is the autism in me, but like, I would be really devastated if I had a pen and it had to be in storage and I wasn't using it. I feel like my pen would be like lonely and sad and feel bad, like sort of like when I was a kid and like my stuffed animal, I didn't want to put my stuffed animals away because I didn't want them to be lonely. Like, it's the same thing exactly. So if I have a pen, it's going to be inked and I'm going to be using it. So I don't want 80 pens because I will never use that much ink ever. So definitely like don't want a lot. What am I trying to say? Don't want a lot of pens. I'm not like super compelled to have a bunch of pens, but inks on the other hand, I feel like like the inks, just like the colors, some are dry, some are wet, some have shading, some have shimmer, some have sheen. Some will maybe clog your pen and you have to do these things to make sure that they don't clog. And it gets so overwhelming. Like, even speaking that out loud, I'm so overwhelmed. Just like, oh, what is the perfect shade of blue for my brain? Like, I could go, right, not in a way, I'm not that way about pens, but with inks, I could just go off the rails. And I did. That's why I had like 100 samples when I first started this hobby. So kind of like saying I'm only going to get Iroshizuku inks means that I can't go too hard on inks. There's limits to the inks that I can buy, and that feels very supportive and very helpful for my brain. The one exception to this might be Sailor's, I can't remember the line. Is it Shikiori or Manyo? I can't remember, but the Sailor Tokiwa Matsu, the green, the kind of like mossy dark green with the red burgundy shading, that is like the one ink that I've been like, maybe I make an exception for that because I have heard it's like a wet ink, but I love wet lubricated inks and just the Iroshizuku line performs so well. I kind of asked, like, why would I need anything else? I mean, I know obviously they don't have all of the color variations, but the colors that they do have are wonderful. And yeah, I feel good about that decision. Okay, let's move on. Question 4. Are there more inks and pens that you have yet to try but would like to? Definitely, if I were to let myself be kind of like more curious and exploratory, I would love to try an Esterbrook Estie because people on YouTube just rave about the Esties. I would also love to try a Bennu Euphoria. I think those are beautiful pens. There's just, in the Esterbrook Estie and the Bennu line, there's just no colors that are really calling my name right now. Excuse me. There's no colors that are really calling my name and being like, yes, I love blue. I love the color blue. So there's basically like no very strong striking blues. I know Estie, the Blue Moon version came out, but I don't love the purple in it. It's just not it's not doing it for me. So if Bennu or Esterbrook come out with like a really gorgeous blue, I might be intrigued to try that. For inks, there are so many Iroshizuku inks that I want to try. I'm so sad that Inaho is gone. I'm so sad about that. I'm so sad that I'm gonna get it wrong, I can't remember, Tsukuchi, the brown, that got discontinued. I'm so sad that that's gone. But even still, there's so many other inks in this line that are so gorgeous and so beautiful that I haven't tried yet. I would like to get samples of them. I have some samples, but I would like to get, you know, more samples from the line that I'm curious about, just to see what I like, what I enjoy. And if I love the samples, I'd love to get, you know, either a 15 ml or a 50 ml bottle and just have a blast with that Iroshizuku line. And again, the one exception is that Sailor Tokiwa Matsu, and I've definitely been kind of like called by the Sailor Manio Kobe, Sailor Manio Haha, Fuji as well. Like, those have been really intriguing and interesting to me, but I also hear like the dual chroma shading, just wow, gorgeous. But I've also heard people say that they're very dry, and I think a dry ink would just really annoy me. I would not, or an ink that's too light also and not very easily legible. And then again, I'm like, oh, maybe I need a broader nib. Like, it just, my brain starts to go on these like spirally rabbit holes that I don't really care to go into. So I'm okay just being like, you know what, it's a Iroshizuku life for me, and that's fine. Okay, number 5, what is your holy grail pen? And I feel like watching these 8 pen question videos, different people have different perceptions of what a holy grail pen is. And I guess that's kind of a subjective thing to say. I would say that for me, my holy grail pen, if it's like, right, there's a difference between like the holy grail pen that's like, this is the best pen ever and I have it in my collection and I own it and I'm so happy that I own it and it is my number 1 pen, versus like the holy grail pen of like, oh, here's my stretch goal, one day I'll have this pen if I save up for it, or if the stars align, then maybe I'll have this pen. I've just kind of heard it kind of talked about 2 ways. I would say my holy grail pen that I own currently is my Pilot Custom 823. It's just, it's just delightful. It feels so solid in my hands. It's so beautiful. I have the clear demonstrator. Let me grab it. Let me show you. Is it in here? Yeah. Yes. Oh, gorgeous. I have Yamabudo in this pen, and it's so beautiful, and the nib is just amazing, and it's just so fun to write with. Yeah, oh man, I love this demonstrator. I'm very worried about Yamabudo staining the resin, but whatever, wabi-sabi, I guess. It'll be fine. Just lovely to write with, and I feel like it's amazing value also, especially compared to, I do love my Sailor pens. This also feels like a holy grail. This is Every Rose Has Its Thorn. It's so pretty. Oh, my cap's coming. I'm done. And then the Yoseka Home, also, like, that feels like a grail pen. And Sailor Tokiwa Matsu would look amazing in this pen. We'll see. I feel like my Decimo is another grail pen. I don't know. Like, I feel very happy with what I have. I don't really feel like there's a pen that exists in the world right now that I would be like, oh man, I want that pen so bad, but it's so out of reach. Maybe one day. I feel just very content with the collection that I have. So how many pens that I currently own? I already kind of spoiled that one. I have 8. Yeah, I have 8 pens. Do you have a limit on the pens and inks in your collection? Is it a number or a feeling? When do you know that you reached your maximum? So I don't necessarily have like a limit, like a numerical limit. I feel like this Rickshaw, is it the Fillmore? I can't remember the model, but this pen case, it fits 6 and then 7, 8, and then somewhere, I think in my purse, I have my Kaweco in a single pen sleeve, my Iguana Blue Kaweco. Excuse me. And I feel like, I guess maybe this is just how my brain's wired, but I guess I kind of feel like if my case only holds 8 pens, or maybe 9, then I can have 8 or 9 pens. And also that feels like a reasonable, manageable amount to ink up and use while being able to use like all of them and not feeling super overwhelmed by that. So I guess, right, I could buy like a second one of these, I guess, but then that would feel like too many pens and it would be unmanageable for me to be using all of them at one time. So I feel pretty happy with the number of pens that I have. So, right, I could maybe get like one more if I wanted to, but I don't really feel like I need to right now. For inks, I definitely do not have a limit on inks, although maybe I should, because these bottles do take up a lot of space and they're not really designed, like the Iroshizuku 15ml bottles, I feel like would just fit really well in a drawer, but these, they're gorgeous and very functional, but they don't really fit well together. So maybe I should have a limit on the inks that I buy, but I don't currently. And I'm okay with that because I only have 3 bottles of Iroshizuku. I only have 3 bottles. I only have 3 bottles of Iroshizuku inks. That's all I have. I have some samples, 4 or 5 mil samples-ish. And that feels pretty good right now. But if there is an ink from the Iroshizuku line that I want, I'm going to get it, either in the 15 mil size or the 50. I haven't quite decided on that yet. But I don't think I have a limit. I guess the limit would be however many Iroshizuku inks are available on the market currently. Amazing. Okay. And then for question 8, what would you do if another pen and ink comes along? If another pen and ink comes along, if it's an Iroshizuku ink, no problem. All for it. Sure. Again, I think I would probably want to sample first before getting a bottle. That feels very doable if I limit myself to the Iroshizuku line. If another pen comes along, that is another question. Like I said, I do have technically like 1 spot left in this case. If my Kaweco is my gym fountain pen and my purse fountain pen, I technically have 1 more spot in here for a pen that I could fill if I want to. So if another pen comes along, I could see myself maybe purchasing it, but I've honestly tried to look for one. Because again, I've had like 1 spot open. I've been like, well, I could get a Leonardo, or I could get an Esterbrook, or I could get a Benu. And I've looked through all of them and nothing is calling me, nothing is speaking to me, nothing is just lighting me up or making me feel excited. And I think that's just a sign for me to wait right now and just use what I have and enjoy using what I have. And I feel good about that. But if, let's say, Esterbrook came out with a bright tealy turquoise blue SD, I might jump on that. That could be a fun time. I might see what's up. But I don't know. I also feel really good about what I have so far and kind of like what it does for me functionally as a writer, as a journaler. I just feel like I have a super functional system, and I would want, like, whatever I get, I would want it to not just be like, oh, let me see what this Esterbrook SD feels like, because so many people love it, and maybe it feels amazing. Like, that's great, and I would love to do that maybe at like a pen show if I had the opportunity to, but I would more like to think about it in the framework of how does this expand my collection functionally, right? So as somebody who journals, as somebody who is a writer, as somebody who, journals to understand patterns to improve my writing and the subjects that I write about, right? I write a lot of personal essays, so journaling is very important for that, for reflection and noticing patterns. And, excuse me, I would just want something that, again, expands my collection functionally. So if I started to feel like, man, I would really love to have a pen that could do headings, like maybe I would get a stub nib or a broad nib. I actually don't have one. I think the broadest pen that I have is my Pilot Decimo, but it really is so broad to me. But again, if I was like, oh, I really need something for headings or something like titles, something like that feels very functional, then okay. Or if I felt super called to use shimmer inks, which I don't. I have no interest in shimmer inks. They're so pretty, but they also are finicky enough that I just don't want to deal with that. My brain just says, no, thank you. I love the sparkles for other people, but I don't need that in my life. But if I did want shimmer, right, functionally, getting something like a TWSBI Stub or a TWSBI Broad Eco would be a great move for that functionally. So something along those lines. So I love that I do have a spot available if the functional need ever comes up, but I think that's what I want to say about that. So I think that is all of the 8 pen questions for 2024. Thank you so much for listening, watching, being here with me. Thank you also so much for your support. It's just been so lovely. This community is just so warm and welcoming, and all of your comments were just so lovely and kind on my last 2 videos. And I just want to say thank you so much. And I'm so excited to share more and get to know all of you and make more videos. So I'm going to do the pen questions for 8 more pen questions for 2025 sometime soon. So if you'd like to watch that, definitely subscribe to the channel, and thank you again so much. Okay, bye.